Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new malicious compliance content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
Wax on, wax on. I used to be a human resources specialist in the Army. At the time of this story, I was about 19. I generally did my job well and passed my fitness exams with flying colors, but I was very socially awkward back then. If there was a joke being made, I was the butt of it. I was basically Radar from MASH, but less endearing and no ESP. I was also frequently on extra duty. Extra duty basically extends your workday several hours past when everyone else goes home. It was a punishment for constantly being late, which was a statement I was making, because the office clock was 5 minutes fast and nobody cared enough to have it fixed. They never fixed it. I even got in trouble for being 5 minutes early because 5 minutes early is 10 minutes late. During extra duty, I was given many meaningful tasks like scrubbing and power washing concrete for no reason, painting entire offices for no reason, picking up pine cones for no reason, sweeping the parking lot for no reason, and my most hated chore of all, buffing. Every night, I buffed the same floor. Every night, I applied several coats of finish to the same floor. I applied over 20 gallons of floor finish to that cerulean, kitchen-sized tile floor in just a 2-month span. And it was never good enough. Every morning my company first sergeant would come in and say the same thing. "What the hell have you been doing all night, Ziggs? If I can't see my reflection, it's not good enough. It should be like looking in a mirror." Bear in mind, I had no clue what I was doing, and they didn't really give me any detailed instructions. I had no idea which buffer pads to use, how much finish to use, how many coats were needed, etc. One night, I was approaching my breaking point because I had just stripped the floor for the first time the previous night and nearly passed out, when he decided to throw me yet another curveball. "You ever wax a floor before, Ziggs?" He hands me a can of wax. "No, First Sergeant, I haven't." He takes the can back, opens it, then scoops out a small amount of the rag, proceeding to spread it over a tile in a circular motion by hand until it disappears. I did not make a Karate Kid joke at the time. I was too busy explaining that I didn't have enough time to do the entire process, plus tile by tile waxing before the night was over. He didn't care. I got the usual response to my protests. "Get it done. You want me to fully buff, finish, and wax a floor in roughly the same amount of time it takes me just to buff it. And with no prior experience, I didn't bother asking how much wax to use or how many times I should go over each tile. I didn't want to know. At that point, I didn't care. What I did know was that skaters often waxed curbs in my hometown to allow the skateboard to slide on it, also known as grinding. I sped through my usual buffing and didn't even bother with more than one coat of finish. I then broke out the wax can and rag and began my new task. I waxed that floor. Then I waxed it some more. I waxed that floor until my arms ached, and I waxed unevenly. Some areas got way more wax than others. 9 p.m. rolls around, and my sergeant comes and locks up so I can leave. The next morning, I came in after our usual morning fitness routine and sat down at my desk, which happened to directly face the doorway to the floor I regularly slaved over. I could see a small portion of the room, but was not exposed enough for people to see me. I should mention that this floor was in the center of the building. If you wanted to get to any of the offices in the company HQ, including my first sergeant's office and even my own, you had to walk through that central room. As it turned out, quite a few people needed to walk through that room on this particular morning, and they were met by some rather challenging terrain. It was quite comical to see people in combat boots slipping all over the place like they were walking on ice, then gingerly trying to walk across like they needed walkers. But the best part was when I heard the frantic squeaking of boots followed by a "Damn it, Ziggs. Never let him wax the floor again." And that's exactly what happened. Never did get feedback on the reflection, though. No fellow soldiers were injured as a result of this. Next one is titled, "Sell the Box." Okay, no problem. My dad was a very interesting man with interesting collections. He was quite wealthy, and he had the money to buy his bizarre oddities. They actually were fun to look at: an authentic suit of armor, old Greek coins from 500 BC, ancient jewelry, etc. He remarried after my sisters and I were adults, and we all pretty much hated the woman he married. It was so obvious why she wanted to marry him. It was for his money. My dad was an extremely intelligent businessman, so I never really understood why he married her. I guess I just assumed he was in lust with her. I just never knew for sure. I did ask him one day why he asked her to marry him. He explained he didn't. She asked him. Again, I asked why did you agree? His answer was that he couldn't think of a reason not to. Okay, Dad. Whatever. Consider this, on her wedding day she was beyond thrilled. Not because she was marrying my dad, but because all 5 of her creepy sons happened to be out of prison at the same time. When he died, the first thing Pat did was to go through all these oddities. She picked out items she knew were of great value and, of course, kept them instead of including them in the estate per the will. It seemed like she was in court constantly over that will, the properties, etc. I lived out of state, and just losing my dad, I wanted no part of the legal battles and drama. I just couldn't. I didn't want to be a part of it. So I hired a lawyer and just asked him to handle it and tell me when it was over. I really couldn't cope with all this. I was sick of it. My dad and I were very close, and it took me a long time to get over the loss of my dad. I just didn't deal with it well, and the thought of what she was doing to all his possessions, it was more than I could deal with at the time. He really loved and enjoyed those items. I was living out of state, and about a year after his death, I went home to see my sis and some friends. Pat knew I was home, and she was aware I knew how to use eBay. She did not. She called me and asked if I could eBay some items. For real. She wanted me to help her with these tasks. Sure, I guess. I went over to the house more because I wanted to see my childhood home one last time. She was notorious for putting everything in writing. She didn't want to speak to us, so she would write notes instead. She left the box on the front doorstep with a note asking me to sell this box on eBay. In the box were these ancient coins, ancient jewelry, etc. They did appear a bit beat up, and I realized she didn't understand that these items were authentic. They weren't replicas, they weren't fake, they were the real deal. I laughed to myself and thought, no problem, Pat, consider it done. On eBay they have a bit of a scam place where you can sell mystery boxes. You don't tell what is in the box. It might be rocks or it might be a treasure. She did say to sell the box, and she did say she wanted it done on eBay. So I listed the box. I was honest. I referred to the request of the step skank and said she wanted me to sell the box. There is another offshoot of eBay where they list odd eBay auctions and bizarre items for sale. My auction made that website. What nobody realized is that what was in the box was legit. It was real. It was worth a great deal of money. I ended up selling the box for I think $44 and change. I sent the original box with all the items listed carefully. I knew she would take me to court over it eventually, so I had to be careful to document everything. And I insured it for several $1,000s. I can't remember the exact number now. USPS has a max for insurance. I think I insured it for $10K, but I could be wrong. That was very likely the true worth. I dutifully sent Pat the check for $44 and change by certified check. Return receipt requested. My stupid sister called her and told her what I had done and what the true worth of it was. Again, just as I knew, we went back to court, and this was in her list of complaints to the judge. I told the judge the truth. I showed him her note. I proved I sent the box, and he actually sided with me as I honestly did not know the exact value of the items. She thought they were fakes. Who was I to disagree? About a week after I sent the box, the guy's father called me. He was very kind and very professional, but was concerned that I scammed his son. He explained that his son was mildly mentally challenged, and I pretty well took all the money he had saved for this box of trinkets, and $44 was a lot of money to his son. He explained that he was aware I didn't know about his son, but would I object to refunding his money if he returned the items? I couldn't help but to laugh. I asked him if he still had the original box. He did. I asked him to really look at those items. They were not quite trinkets, as he assumed. Then I explained the whole story. Then Dad felt bad that I lost so much money, and he actually offered to return them. Nope, I didn't want them back. It was truly icing on the cake for me. The box went to a guy who really didn't have much, but he does now. I couldn't have planned that ending better had I tried. The universe does work in mysterious ways. Next one is titled, Hey Boss Lady. He chose to do things the hard way. This happened to my BAL, but I love this story so much, so you're getting it. My BAL was in the Army for a while back in the mid to late 90s through to the early 2000s. He worked in health services. He was one among a handful of people that were charged with notifying new recruits of the results of their HIV/STD testing. His boss is quite high-ranking, but I don't know which rank. I do know that there was only a dozen or so people at or above her rank, and because she was in charge of the hospital/medical services, she had 100% authority to tell anyone on base to go truck themselves if it meant it would mess with base health or safety. There was also a rule that men notified men and women notified women. He and a McDoctor would often do this, same but a woman for the females. Usually there was only one dude and one gal per shift, so you dropped what you were doing and went. Makes sense. One day, he's told to grab someone for their notification. They worked in the base mess cafeteria on the line. He didn't mention specifics because he couldn't, but the dude had other diseases that could have been transferred by contaminated food products. Basically, you don't want this guy serving you food. For ease of typing, let's call him Fred. The guy in charge of the mess was a notorious piece of hard brass. He got stuff done well and under budget, but was so mean and ugly about everything that no one wanted to deal with him, usually referring to his assistants instead. He will be Buck, as in Buck you. I'm funny. BAL was sent to grab Fred right before midday meal service. This had been problematic before, so he asked his boss what to do if Buck pushed back. Boss lady was stern, but kind-hearted, so you would get a straightforward, honest, and supporting answer. She looked my BAL right in the eyes and said, "You are acting on my authority as a health officer. Whatever you got to say within the confines of the military code of justice, I will back your play." Not an exact quote, but that's the way BAL always said it. You say boss lady gave you specific orders to do the thing, don't break the law, and she back you. I always thought it was awesome that she'd be so trusting. Anyway, BAL makes the drive across base to the mess and asks to see Fred. Food is on the line, but no one has arrived yet. Fred comes over, BAL says he's gotta come with me, and Fred goes to clear it with Buck. Instead of staying behind and waiting to hear back, BAL followed Fred. This would be useful later. Buck is in his office doing last-minute stuff before lunch, and Fred tells him health services needs him. Buck looks at BAL and says Fred will head over after third lunch winds down. Sir, no sir. Fred needs to come now. Buck explains that food is about to start and he can't spare him. You're not high-ranking enough to demand this. Private, blah, blah bullying, go away. And he guesses where I'm going with this. So BAL grabs out his radio and calls his boss. Yeah, high-ranking boss. Respectfully addressing you, for your instruction, we're going to be clearing and dumping all food, both cooked and uncooked, on the line and off that's in the mess. Who do we notify that the mess is closed, and how do we arrange someone to get basically 400 plus fresh portions from the warehouse? Buck is freaking out. What the duck are you doing? People will be here in 10 minutes. Well, boss lady said that anything Fred came into contact with, or anything cooked by people Fred came into contact with needs to get pulled, tested for illnesses, and dumped if he can't come now. To explain, if you handle a raw chicken and don't wash your hands, you risk cross-contamination and getting others sick. If he could make it to health services, they could run a quick test to see if his illness posed a threat and call down to the mess. It would take 15 to 30 minutes and cause a slight delay, or Buck could take over 2 hours cooking everything again. BAL said if he had a problem with boss lady's orders, he could go down to her office and state his complaint to her face. He would surely take not just heat, but torpedo his career for calling out a superior officer. So Buck tells Fred to get the hell out and not to come back unless he's got written instructions stating he is not a continuation risk. BAL and Fred leave, and BAL saw a lunch will be delayed type sign go up as he was driving away. First and only time it happened while he was stationed there. Within 25 or so minutes, Buck was able to reopen for lunch. BAL said it was one of the only times he'd be able to say screw you, and the horse you rode in on to a superior officer without getting backlash. Last one is titled, "The only crap you need to know is desktop repair, you got it." So I was working as a supervisor in a computer repair center. As the title suggests, I work in the desktop repair center. After months of handling on hold unit, paperwork, storage, organization, and training, my boss and I get into an argument. I tell him I am underpaid for the work I am doing. His only response, I am too. So when he asked me why the department is crooked, I pointed out that the director of the project said my department was under renovation. I told him we are under renovations, and no one has told me anything. In fact, I don't know crap. He then tells me the only crap you need to know is desktop repair. Important note, I was working on the laptop repair department before I got moved. So I was working on laptops when I was told this. I finished working on the laptops, cleaned up my desk, and started work on the desktop, letting everything else fall behind. So far, the storage is basically non-existent. The organization, while there is now a nightmare as it's in 2 places and not labeled, I have stopped training people and stopped working on laptops. This sent to frustrated managers, loss in goals, loss in revenue, a bad review from the company's owners, and 3 people leaving my department. Although those 3 were ready fully trained techs. I'm still waiting to see the further fallout, but I'm also looking for new work, as my boss's actions are quite despicable. But overall, I think we lost about 10 grand because of a simply promotion. Thanks for listening.